Communication is not just speaking and listening. It is more than just translating a message. True interpersonal communication is an emotional journey. It's about the relationship. The communicators learn about each other as well as learning about themselves. Communication is a tool for growth. You start here and you add and you add and you add yourself and you become a better person and you become a better communicator. As I learned to better communicate interpersonally, I discovered my challenges and barriers, and I learned about myself. I now understand how my background contributes to my conversation. And in spite of the obstacles, I found resources that I can use to become a more effective communicator and build fulfilling relationships that teach me more about myself in the long run. So, let's begin with my overarching goal. Now, this is a goal that I have built and to kind of understand why communication is so important to me and what makes communication essential to life and relationships. And my overarching goal is to embrace the relationship in communication, giving some and taking some to grow as a person, a learner, and a leader. Now, to reach that goal, I start with understanding my background and the influence of my communication style, whether positive or negative, because no matter the good qualities that I have or the negative qualities I have, they both teach me something if I'm willing to learn the lesson. My background is pretty simple. I grew up a pretty quiet kid, keeping to myself. I had friends, but none that I really, spent time with outside of school. I needed to be responsible at home because with a single mother home, and I was the oldest kid, there was a lot that I had to do. And so that really kept me on my toes and separated me from my peers. I would have to say that growing up, Jesus is probably my best friend. This reserved background leads directly into the results I received on my personality test. Now, after taking the DISC personality assessment and the Uniquely You interpersonal communication skills test, I discovered that I'm a people pleaser. A steady influencer, a person who listens well and understands the emotions of others. Now, according to Carbonell, the CIS personality is passive and tends to let people dominate the conversation. These personalities can be outgoing, but they lack assertiveness. And that was shown in my Uniquely You test according to on queendom.com. And so my personality as a whole, I'm friendly, kind, and caring, which causes people to like me and be drawn to me, enjoying my presence and being around me. But that also means that I can be too reserved and indecisive, trying to figure out how to please the people around me and never show my true self. Now, a part of learning about communication is understanding how my background leads to communication barriers. And so it leads to communication barriers. Now, some of these barriers are self-disclosure and passive listening. Now, putting others first is not always a bad thing. Being self is a quality of Christ. It is when it becomes the only focus in relationships and conversations that it proves to be a barrier. Uncovering my communication barriers takes longer to discuss because they are walls that were built over years. And these weren't barriers that just popped up overnight. These are things that kind of added on top of one thing on top of the other from the time I was a kid until now. I'm 26 years old. And so these are barriers that I've built up. But until studying what could be barriers to communication, I didn't know that I had the barriers. So my background as a passive person and never feeling that I could be vulnerable with others created barriers not only when I speak, but when I listen. Now, communication is not one way. It's not I just talk, but it's I talk, I listen, I talk, I listen, and it's two ways. So it's important to share as much as you listen. Now, opening up to others and sharing my present feelings has not always been easy. I'm getting better, but it was a challenge before. Now, David Johnson, who wrote an essay in Bridges Not Walls by Stewart, his essay concerning self-disclosure helped me to understand the importance of being open with others. It builds trust and connects the relationship. Now, in the relationship, we build identity. And that's what I was talking about as far as giving and taking, because what I say will build the person on the other end's identity, as well as what they say will help me to build my identity of myself. And so we know ourselves better through interacting with others. Now, I consider myself a good listener. Like, I've always been the go-to friend, the one that everyone comes to when they sit down and say, I got to talk about this, I got to talk about that. But I can listen better by being mindful, as suggested by Rebecca Schaefer, also from Bridges Not Walls. Now, listening better and being present in the conversation improves my ability to self-disclose, because I respond appropriately to the conversation. Now, according to Peterson, ritual listening is a trap where good listeners get stuck just being good. They zone out and just hear words, which is level 2 listening, according to Burley Allen. Now, listening is no longer active, and we miss the opportunity to say the right thing at the right time. And sometimes that means that I'll have to share a part of myself to make the difference. Now, only my feelings as a listener deepens my conversation when I speak. I can be empathetic and emotionally engaged. Now, in a way, I've already discussed resources and strategies to overcome being closed off and not actively listening. But to accomplish a goal, strategies need to be specific. To overcome my communication barriers, I will attend more small group meetings. And I have a men's meeting at my church that I go to now, but there are other groups that I can attend and join so that I can allow myself the opportunity to be more open. You know, the intimate settings will encourage me to open up among a few people that I trust and learn to accept that they care for me and want to hear what I have to say. I'll take advantage of Peterson's listening techniques in Why Don't I Listen Better? Why Don't We Listen Better? There are techniques in there such as parathinking and interrupting and techniques and advice on how to listen to people even when they're talking about death or talking about suicide. So taking advantage of that resource will also benefit me. The final strategy is practice. Now, Susan Scott equates relationship and conversation. If a relationship takes work, effort, and discipline, so does enlarging my conversation. I take this process into my hand when I act on the formula given by Liberty University for enlarging my conversation. I identify my needs, and then I intentionally resource helpful materials to strengthen the areas and those needs that have weakened me. Now, once I get past my barriers, I need an action plan to accomplish my overarching goal. To embrace the relationship and communication, giving some and taking some to grow as a person, a learner, and a leader. Now, I'm giving these as steps, but they're not necessarily steps. So step 1, overcome barriers using the strategies and resources. Step 2 is to journal. The more I understand myself, the more I can open up. Step 3 is to learn, read more, research more, understand communication, and understand psychology and things about myself. Cooperate. Step 4. So I can join groups, get involved, make new friends that relate to me. And step 5 is to listen with my heart and practice empathy, compassion, and grace, like Caleb and Catherine learned to do in the film Fireproof as they followed the love dare given by Caleb's parents. Now, my action plan is not as step-by-step as it seems. It is an ongoing process. Communication is not an end-all and be-all in one moment. It happens over time and grows as we grow in relationships. I evolve with each new connection I make, and I learn more with each passing moment, and I become the man I am meant to be with every opportunity to communicate with the world around me. The end is a start to a new beginning. So as I'm concluding, the end is a start to a new beginning. I'm just getting started. As I'm learning about myself, I'm doing something new. But I'll end with this. Communication allows us to journey with each other and through each other to the place where we are all the same. The heart of humanity. Thank you.